My mom and dad brought me up right, and first I thank you. You don't know me from a hole in the wall, and I don't know you, and chances are good that our roads will not cross much in the years to come. So before I do anything else, I say thank you for your attentiveness, for your witness, for the grace of your gift to me. Sometimes I use bad language suddenly. I'm sorry if that happens. I'm from New York City, and I'm a professional editor, so just roll with it. Sometimes I sing, which is very unnerving. My son Joey says, "Dad, when you sing, it sounds like goose farts on a muggy day." So if that happens, roll with it. Sometimes I make you sing. So if that happens, drop your dignity and sing like hell. What else should I apologize for? My nose has been busted 3 times, twice by my brothers, once by my brother Peter with a 2x4. So I have kind of a nasal mutter, sorry, and that should cover it.
We're happy to have on campus yesterday and today Brian Doyle, Portland author, magazine editor, maybe a little bit of bon vivant.
Oh dear no. Dad, husband, citizen, son, brother, scribbler, ink-stained wretch, as they say.
I used to love to start my readings with rules for small twin boys in the bathroom. Rule number 1, point it down! Rule number 2, keep pointing it down! Rule number 3, Dad does all wiping. Rule number 5, the most important rule of your whole lives, boys, each boy points his own pointer. Can I help my brother? No, you cannot help your brother. Rule number 10, no, yes, Dad has a pointer. Rule number 11, no, Mom does not have a pointer. Rule number 12, no, I don't know where Mom's pointer went. On and on and on and on. They used to tear it down, and I'd pin it back up again, and pin it back. I've done readings all over the place, and I used to, whenever I did my reading, I would leave copies of that behind me, and I figured it must be pinned up in bathrooms all over the Western Hemisphere. Well, one more little piece, if you don't mind. First kiss. One thing no one ever informs you of when you get ready to kiss a girl for the first time is where you put your nose. Do you lay it alongside hers like a skipper eases his ship along a dock? Or do you take turns, alternating left and right? You laugh, but this is a pressing question, as you well remember yourself. And your hands, do they quest? Or do they alight on her shoulders like birds, like leaves? The glasses on each of your noses, is it sweet when they clink, or is that dorky? Should you take them off just before you kiss, or is that too confident that you will be kissing? And most of all, the breathing. This is a real problem. Do you hold your breath? Do you aim for staggered breaths like in the pool? And who's in charge? If your partner wants to retire, what are the accepted signal flags for such a decision? Can I appeal? I hear you laughing, but you were in the same boat as me. We were shaking. We so wanted to do this well, and so wanted to be seen to want to. In a sense, it was practice for so very many things that we would want, but would not know how to get or know what to do with after we got them. You know full well what I mean. Nothing was as gently sweet, nothing so roaringly nerve-wracking. How could both things be true at once? How could that be? Yet it was so, and it would be hourly more so the rest of your life. I read this to my lovely bride. I thought it was pretty cool. Hey, and she goes, "Who's that about?"
Speaking of my lovely bride, I just wrote this the other day, 6:39 a.m. Just the way you turned and looked at me for an instant this morning in the kitchen, and the way in which one of our children held out a fist to touch as he slogged by toward the shower, and the way the dog turns his nose up to be rubbed, and then turns his body like an aircraft carrier adjusting course and sidles into you for a serious scratching. The little things that are not little, not in the least. Amen. There are no little things. There are no little things. My father says, there are no small things, only people too small to see how big they are. I met a guy recently who invented a heart valve that saved 500,000 lives. And I said to him, what would you say to the kids who are now you? He did this when he was 25. He had an idea. He suddenly thought, oh my God, if I do it the other way around, this blah, blah, blah. And he saved 500,000 lives. He goes, I would tell them, find out the gift that you were given, learn how to use it, learn how to shape it and wield it, and then get out there and use it. Go, use it. Find out what you're great at. Maybe it's not what you think that you're great at. Maybe it's not even something that you want to be great at. Maybe you got a gift that you don't really want. Use it. Find out what it is and milk it and run with it. You know, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. This is not some old baloney coming from the stage, I'm telling you. It's for real. You know, find out what it is, man. If you're going to college, use college to find out what your gift is for. You know, I know it's love and who loves me and who am I going to love. I got that. But there's something even beyond that, you know. The best things that ever happened to me is a woman said, yeah, and my children came from the stars. You know, if I had to die tomorrow, I would die as the luckiest man who ever lived, because I got to live with those people, you know. But by God, I hope I don't die tomorrow, because I want to catch some more stories and share them and jazz people and change their lives a little bit, maybe, just a little bit. That's all I wanted to do today, is change things a little tiny bit, maybe. So this is for my brother. And the woman who gave this to me, this is in memory of her brother, Bill, who also died recently. At a stoplight one morning, I burst into tears, thinking about my brother who will soon be dead from cancer, which no one says, but everybody's thinking in the family. And I get honked at by a huge, angry guy in a car the size of a toaster, which makes me laugh while I'm crying. You've all been there. The rest of the day, I think about how thankful I am for 50 years of this brother. Years of fistfights and basketball and stealing shirts from each other, and mud and laughter and surfing and postcards, and first terrible little goat beards. We call them the third armpit in my family. Right? And picking on our mom as she piped imprecations and silly gifts and awkward conversations and unbelievably deep conversations, and digging cars out of snow and taking each other for granted until we didn't, and awkwardly holding hands while praying at funerals and bobbing each other's kids on our knees and 1,000 other things. He stood up recently, tall and gaunt and fragile and illuminated, at our family reunion, and he said quietly that he loved us with a deep and inarticulate love, and that he was who he was because of us. Nothing in life ever made him so happy or so proud as to be milling around jostling with all of us. Nothing. And if he'd never been very good at saying that to us, he was sorry. But he felt that way most powerfully and deeply, and this was damn well the time to say it, wasn't it? Which it certainly was, which it certainly is. And all day I thought, why do we not tell each other every hour that we love each other? Why is that? Because we should. Maybe right now, right after this sentence ends. Amen. Ooh. I just talked to my mom and she said, are you still crying in public? I said, yes, Mom. Good boy, she says. Stories were everywhere in the air. There were books all over the house. There were stories in every mouth. Then later to me it became really almost a moral thing to witness people as the great story, to witness people's grace under duress, to listen to them. Everybody will tell you a story if you ask. I wanted to say thank you to Oregon in the worst way. I wanted to say thank you for 25 years of joy and pain and rain, and everybody I love the most is from here, and there's a shaggy grace in Oregon that I adore. There's a moist, brave, dignified, graceful community here. We're only here for a minute. We're here for a little window, and to use that time to catch and share shards of light and laughter and grace seems to me the great story. And I love that work. I love that work. Sheniki is the great word in Gaelic, story catcher. It was a real job in my Irish culture. My great-grandfather was the village story catcher. You know, did he get paid? No, not much, but it was an important job. To catch and share stories over the course of time was a real job, and it mattered. You know, if you don't catch and share stories of your country and your people and what you hold important and what you think are virtues and vices, and what you'll have nothing. And your kids will be rotten children, rotten, snotty children, okay? I cannot tell you how many people of my age have said, with tears in their eyes, why did I not ask my parents and my grandparents for their stories? Why? You know, the great Helen Garner, for those of you who are in the Australia nonfiction now, the great Helen Garner said, sobbing, why was I so egotistical that I didn't ask my parents for their stories? What was the matter with me? You know, and so if you don't know your family stories, especially I say this with young people, if you don't know your family stories, then you're not being responsible to your family. Your family is everything is a story. Families are only collections of stories, many of them painful. You know, a lot of what family stories are about endurance and grace under duress. Isn't that so? Right? And I like to read this. It's hard for me to read and I always cry, but it's for real. You know, tears are good, right? A sin. Committed a sin yesterday in the hallway at noon. I roared at my son. I grabbed him by the shirt collar. I frightened him so badly that he cowered and wept. And when he turned to run, I grabbed him by the arm so roughly that he flinched. And it was that flicker of fear and pain across his face, the bright, eager, wholly riveting face I've loved for 10 years, that stopped me then and haunts me this morning. For I am the father of that fear. I sent it snarling into his heart, and I can never get it out now, which torments me and will torment me every day the rest of my life. Yes, he was picking on his brother, and yes, he picked on his brother all morning, and yes, this was a culmination of many edgy incidents already, and no, he hadn't paid the slightest attention to warnings and remonstrations, and yes, he'd been snide and supercilious all day, and yes, he had deliberately done exactly the thing he'd been specifically warned not to do. But still I roared at him and grabbed him and terrified him and made him cower. And now there's a dark, evil wriggle between us that makes me sit here with my hands over my face, ashamed to the bottom of my bones. I don't know how sins can be forgiven. I grasp the concept. I admire the genius of the idea. I suspect it to be the seed of all real peace. I savor those who have the mad courage to live by it, but I don't understand how foul can be made fair. What's done cannot be undone, and my moment of rage in the hallway is an indelible scar on his heart and mine. And while my heart is a ragged old bag after half a century of slings and stings, his is still the new, eager, open, suggestible, innocent heart of the young. He's committed only the small sins of a child, the halting first lies, the failed test paper hidden in the closet, the window broken in petulance, the stolen candy bar, the silent witness as a classmate is bullied, the insults flung like knives at the dinner table. Whereas I'm a man and have had many lies squirming in my mouth, and far too often evaded the mad, ragged Christ, ignored his stink, his rotten teeth, his cloak of soggy newspapers, his voice of broken glass. No God can forgive what we do to each other. Only the injured can summon that extraordinary grace, and where such grace is born, we cannot say for all our fitful genius and miraculous machinery. We use the word God so easily, so casually, as if our label for the incomprehensible meant anything at all. And we forget all too easily that the wriggle of holy is born only through the stammer and stumble of us, who are always children. So we turn again and again to each other and bow and ask forgiveness and mill what mercy we can muster from the muddle of our hearts. The instant I let go of my son's sinewy arm in the hallway, he sprinted away and slammed the door and flew off the porch and ran down the street, and I stood there simmering in shame. And then I walked down the hill into the laurel thicket, as dense and silent as the dawn of the world, and found him there huddled and sobbing. We sat in the moist green dark for a long time, not saying anything, the branches burly and patient. Finally, I asked quietly for his forgiveness, and he asked for mine, and we walked out of the woods hand in hand, changed men. Amen. Ugh. I always sob like a baby reading that, you know. You start out as a parent, you get thrown in the deep end, you have no idea what you're doing. There's no parent school. There should be a parent school and a husband school in Florida. Like Bradenton, Florida, there should be husband school. You have to go for 6 months and get your certificate, you know. And so, but you get thrown in the deep end as a parent. I'll tell you something about your father you don't know. 18, 19 years old, every one of you has a father, I assume. You know what? I'll tell you something about your dad. He's scared to death. He's terrified. He doesn't think he's any good at it. He knows he's screwed up. And he's scared to death you're going to get hurt, and there's nothing he can do about it. He's helpless to protect you against pain. And it's something he'll never tell you, and he has laid awake at night in the deep blue hours of the night, terrified that you were going to get hurt. It's easy to protect you when you're little. It's cars and dogs are the enemy. But now it's not easy because he knows that your heart's going to get stomped on. You know, he knows that you're going to get hurt. He knows that you young ladies are going to have some guy lie, and he can't do anything about it. And he knows, you young men, that you're going to have a woman say, you know what, I don't like you as much as you like me. You know, and then he's afraid you're going to huddle behind a brooding wall of loneliness. He's afraid, you know, that he's no good at it. I got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters, and everyone was the same. I was there too, man. I was in that hallway too, you know. I mean, some of them were comic. It turns out the kids never remember, but the fathers, my own father called me sobbing on the telephone because he had punched my brother Kevin and knocked him down the stairs. And I said, geez, Kevin never told me that story. I don't think Kevin remembers that story. He goes, Kevin doesn't remember. I'll never forget. I'll never forget. The father never forgets. So, recently I met a quiet young woman who didn't say much, but what she said was wry and pithy and direct. And after a while I asked if I could take notes as she talked. And she said, okay. And this is most of what she said. My name is Jacqueline. You can call me Jackie. Until recently you could call me Lieutenant. I'm now retired from the service. I'll be 27 years old on Sunday at 1,400 hours. I was a hematology nurse. I'm in good health considering. I drink a lot of tea. I learned to love tea in Iraq. Some days we had tea 10 times a day. We found a samovar and learned how to use it. I had to look up the word samovar. It was the most remarkable tea. He vanished one day when his truck was hit by the bandits. Another man took his place. He vanished too. I took his place. After a while, I forgot everybody's names. For a while, I called people by their numbers, but after a while, I didn't call them anything. That's when I knew I had war sickness, big time. I never got hit by fire, but pretty much everyone I know did. For a while, I thought it was me, that as soon as I said hello to someone or shook their hands or learned their names, they were doomed. So I stopped touching people and learning their names. You would think wigging out in the middle of the war would be bad, but it's just normal. No one talks about what happens to the people nothing happens to, but something happens to them and no one talks about it. What a line! A 27-year-old kid said this to me, for God's sake. No one talks about what happens to the people nothing happens to, but something happens to them and no one talks about it. Probably because we don't have any words for what happens. The fact is that wars kill words, but no one talks about that. Wars kill everything except more wars. Wars never end. They just hibernate and mutate and come back stronger somewhere else. Wars are the zombies of history. Some of what wars kill off, you see getting killed off, like kids and towns and schools and Saturdays. But some you don't, like birds. Birds don't nest in wars, you know, so pretty soon there's no birds. And where are you without birds? What kind of world is that with no birds in it? You notice things getting killed off little by little, and then after a while you stop noticing things altogether. You don't even notice yourself. You just get by. By the end, all I cared about was my boots. You want really good boots in a war, trust me on this one. I had the best boots you could ever imagine, and I kept them clean and oiled and ready for anything. When I got out of the war, I kept wearing my boots for the longest time, all day, every day. I wore them with my pajamas and with my bathrobe and with my shorts in the summertime. It's only the last few weeks I can go anywhere without my boots on. Those are really good boots. When I'm in those boots, nothing can happen to me. Trust me on this one. I keep them on a special shelf at home just in case. You want to know something real and true and honest and deep about war? I'll tell you. Boots. Good boots are the secret. Really good boots. You know? I stood there shivering, thinking, oh, God, oh, all these kids, you know, they're just kids. They're kids. You know, 19, 20, ugh, you know. Sorry. No, I'm not sorry. Tears are good. Tears are okay. Tears mean that something broken open maybe, right? Tears are okay. My wife says, you're cruel. You like it when people cry at what you write. And I think, I love that they got hit someplace that maybe needed to be opened a little more, you know, and, you know, I mean, I get the sweetest letters. I get crazy letters, you know, but I get the sweetest letters. One lady came up to me recently and said, I just read your novel, and, you know, I've read it 5 times, and it's 5 different books. There's more books inside your book than you know you wrote. And I thought, oh my God, how sweet, you know. And I got a letter recently from a guy who said, I was a desert, and your essay came and gave me water when I needed it so bad. I was like, oh, take me now, Jesus. You know? Except I want grandchildren, but not right now. You know, so. Cancer is normal. Cancer is natural. Cancer has been around forever. It lives inside all of us. It's a cellular thing. It's not some alien invasive species from the planet X. You know, and we've tried to burn it out. We've tried to cut it out. We've tried to drug it out. You know, and it's with us. It's natural, and the way to solve it is natural. This is the way to solve it with this weapon right here. You know, you think you're giving money to the Providence Cancer Center. You're not. You're giving it to a dream team. You're giving it to an idea factory. You're giving it to an imagination farm. Every single dollar you give, every single dollar, every single penny, it creates another minute toward the time that is coming. Cancer's time is done. Cancer's gonna be done. And it's gonna be done in this century. You trust me, mark my words. I ain't gonna live long enough to know I'm right, but I'm right and I know it, you know. One kid asked me this bluntly the other day. If everything you ever wrote piddled away, except one thing, would you be okay with that? I'm like, yeah, because I knew what it was. An essay called Leap about the couple who jumped off the South Tower that day on September 11th, holding hands. No one knows who they were. No one knows if they were lovers, neighbors, married, colleagues, or just met each other there at the lip of hell. But a man reached for a woman, and a woman reached for a man at the edge of the abyss, at the very edge of life and death. Two hands went out. One hand reached for another person, and the other hand reached down here, and they held hands and they jumped off. You know, they would have gone unconscious on the way down because it's too far to fall without breathing. And then when they hit the ground, as the Mayor Giuliani reported, there was a pink mist in the air from bodies falling that day from the towers. But I wrote that piece because after September 11th, I was so speechless. I had nothing in my mouth. I had nothing in my fingers. I was ashamed of myself. I was like, how can you call yourself a writer and not have anything to say? But I thought, I'm not adding to the ocean of witless commentary and vengeful prose I wrote. I refuse. You know, everybody was so filled with rage. And I thought, I refuse. And then I thought, I'm going to find a piece. I got to find a story underneath. There's got to be a story there for me. There's got to be a story. And I found it. I found it again and again and again. The couple who leaped off the South Tower holding hands, the fireman, you know, the teacher ran out of the ash. Oh my God, the stories of unbelievable courage that day. The guy who carried a woman in a wheelchair down 40 floors. You got to be kidding. Oh my God. This is another one of my pet peeves is sports heroes. You want to hear about a sports hero? A guy carried a lady in her wheelchair 40 floors. I don't need to hear about some damn football player. I'm hearing about this guy. There's a story. Oh my God. A couple leaped from the South Tower hand in hand. They reached for each other and their hands met and they jumped. Jennifer Brickhouse saw them falling hand in hand. Many people jumped, perhaps hundreds, no one knows. They struck the pavement with such force that there was a pink mist in the air. The mayor reported the mist. A kindergarten boy who saw people falling in flames told his teacher that the birds were on fire. She ran with him on her shoulders out of the ashes. Tiffany Keeling saw fireballs falling that she later realized were people. Jennifer Griffin saw people falling and wept as she told the story. Nico Winstraw saw people falling, free-falling backwards with their hands out, like they were parachuting. Joe Duncan on the roof in Duane Street looked up and saw people jumping. Henry Weintraub saw people leaping as they flew out, he said. John Carson saw 6 people falling over themselves, he said. Falling, they were somersaulting. Steve Miller saw people jumping from 1,000 feet in the air. Kirk Kelson saw people flailing on the way down, people lining up and jumping. Too many people falling, he said. Jane Tedder saw people leaping, and the sight haunts her at night to this day, she says. Steve Thomas counted 14 people jumping, and then he stopped counting. Stuart DeHaan saw one woman's dress billowing as she fell, and he saw a shirtless man falling end over end, and he too saw the couple leaping hand in hand. Several pedestrians were killed by people falling from the sky. A fireman was killed by a body falling from the sky. But a man reached for a woman's hand, and she reached for his hand, and they leaped out the window holding hands. I try to whisper prayers for the sudden dead and the harrowed families of the dead and the screaming souls of the murderers, but I keep coming back to his hand and her hand, nestled in each other with such extraordinary, ordinary, succinct, ancient, naked, stunning, perfect, simple, ferocious love. Their hands reaching and joining are the most powerful prayer I can imagine, the most eloquent, the most graceful. It's everything we're capable of against horror and loss and death. It's what makes me believe that we're not craven fools and charlatans to believe in divinity, to believe that human beings have greatness and holiness within them like seeds that open only under great fires, to believe that some unimaginable essence of who we are persists past the dissolution of what we were, to believe against such evil hourly evidence that love is why we are here. No one knows who they were. Husband and wife, lovers, dear friends, colleagues, strangers thrown together at the window there at the lip of hell. Maybe they didn't even reach for each other consciously. Maybe it was instinctive reflex as they both decided at the same time to take 2 running steps and jump out the shattered window. But they did reach for each other, and they held on tight, And they jumped and they fell endlessly into the smoking canyon at 200 miles an hour, falling so far and so fast that they would have blacked out before they hit the pavement near Liberty Street, so hard that there was a pink mist in the air. Jennifer Brickhouse saw them holding hands, and Stuart DeHaan saw them holding hands, and I hold on to that. Amen.
Thank you.
I feel like at a gospel revival meeting, you know.
Well, you said right before you read that your 10-year-old daughter called you out when you said there was nothing to write about 9/11. And how did you feel when you found there was something to say?
So moved that I think I could barely drape words on it, you know. I mean, like everybody else, I read those Portraits in Grief that were in the New York Times. The Oregonian reprinted them. I read them every day, every single day, as an act of citizenship and as an act of prayer and reverence. And day after day, there would be one. It's impossible to catch someone's life in a paragraph. That's just not possible. But the genius of those things was they would take one moment and tell you a little story about this person. And every day there would be one that just gave you the shivers. You know, the one that nailed me, that made me start writing pieces. I ended up writing 3 pieces for each of my friends. One piece for each of my friends is sort of a giving bin Laden the finger from Oregon, you know. But I vividly remember one of them was a story of this young guy. He'd been a fireman. He was probably 36, who'd been roasted in the towers, you know. But on the weekends, he was a lifeguard. And the one story they chose to tell about this guy, here's this big, strong guy. He's like 36 and 6'4", 220, you know, and he was a lifeguard. And one day this a young woman brings her dad to the beach. He's in a wheelchair. He's really frail. He's got a few days left to go. He's going to die. But he had been a lifeguard too when he was young and strong. And she can't get him across the beach in his wheelchair, you know. And this big, strong fireman comes down off his lifeguard stand and carries the old man into the sea in his arms and says to the old man in that inimitable New York accent, "I'll stay here all day if you need me." You know, it's like, oh, man, do you need to have any other information about that guy without getting the shape of his heart imprinted on your heart? I was so moved by that, you know, and it's such proof that a little story has such huge shoulders, you know. Stories are food. Stories are holy. Stories are, you know, we could not live without them. We would be naked and empty without stories. The great poet in Oregon history is William Stafford, and I hope everybody's read him. He's an unbelievably great poet. And the greatest line ever written in Oregon was not written by Ken Kesey, it was not written by Ursula Le Guin or Barry Lopez or, God help me, Brian Doyle. It was William Stafford. Violence is a failure of the imagination. You know, ponder that one from 20 different angles, you know what I mean? I ended up talking about September 11th today to one of the classes because 3 of my friends were murdered on September 11th, you know? And I was infuriated. I was enraged. Tommy Crotty, Farrell Lynch, Sean Lynch. Good men, good men. And their wives sleep alone to this day. And their children set one fewer place at the table because of that guy in a cave, a coward. And like everybody else, 99.9% of me, I'm a guy, I'm an American, I'm from New York. You know, I wanted to rip his head off. And the other little tiny splinter inside me, the one that is facing the right direction, said, and then what? He kills your friends, you kill him. Isn't this an ancient cycle? Have we not done this for the last freaking million years? Are we ever going to get it better? You know, and you know what I'm talking about. There's a country beyond the country that we see. And I'm not talking about the United States of America. I'm talking about us. And so I told the story of the couple that leaped from the South Tower. And the firemen ran up that day, knowing they would never come back down. You know, they would never come back down, and they ran up anyway. As Springsteen said, they must have seen their wives and children's faces hanging in the smoke. And they knew they would never see them ever again, ever. And they ran up anyway. And you can't put a word on that. You can't say duty or responsibility or honor. Those are weak words. Why did they run up? Love, somehow. Some kind of crazy, defiant, insistent love. That light will defeat the dark. That hope will defeat despair. That courage will defeat murder. It's possible. You know it's possible. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I'm telling you something that you know deep inside. It's possible to give darkness the finger. It's possible to give violence the finger. It's possible to bring humor and laughter and love and community and bring it to bear like a weapon against the dark. It's an old story of violence, and it's a stupid story. You know, I'll be damned if we will be divided as a people in this country by opinions about politics. There's things that are important, and there are other things. There's substance and illusion, as the great Van Morrison says. And the substance is children, humor, imagination. What is our species for? You know, what are we good at as a species? We can't fly, we can't swim very well, and our noses stink compared to our dog, right? What are we good at? I think it's imagination and humor. I think those are the things that we're here for, you know. And that's, if ever we evolve to a place where violence flees squirming and moaning into the darkness, it will be because of imagination and humor. And that's why stories matter. That's why books matter. That's why libraries matter. That's why bookstores matter, you know. What is Chris? Chris is the chaplain of this particular chapel, isn't she? You know? Never take that for granted, what you have in your town, right? So the other story, the other essay is called Dawn and Mary, and that's the one I'm going to give you. You take it home with you tonight, and your homework assignment is, you read it tonight. Read it tonight before midnight. You read that essay, and then you make 10 copies, and you give it to 10 people who should read it also. And they make 10 copies, and on it goes. And it has nothing to do with the author, nothing. The author was lucky that the story came and tapped him on the shoulder and said, tell me. This is the story of Dawn Hochsprung and Mary Sherlach, Sandy Hook Elementary School, Newtown, Connecticut, December 14th. And when December 14th rolls around this year, if you let it be only an anniversary, I will be very upset. And I know where you live, okay? Dawn and Mary, it's the story of Dawn and Mary, 9 o'clock in the morning, December 14th. They're in another boring staff meeting in the principal's office. And the bell rings, and they sit down, and they start the meeting. Boring. And what do they hear in the hallway? Pop, pop, pop. The worst sound you could hear in a school. Pop, pop, pop. Sound of gunfire. And according to survivors, Dawn Hochsprung, age 45, jumps up from her seat at the head of the table and says, you know what that sound means? We've been trained for this. Do the training. Get down on the floor, use the table as a barrier, and lock the door after me. And she runs out into the hallway, right? Followed to her amazement by Mary Sherlach, age 63, staff psychologist at Sandy Hook Elementary, right? Last year, she was retiring in the spring, right? She runs out into the hallway, and according to survivors, Mary Sherlach says, you're not going out there without me. And the two women run into the hallway, and they run down the hallway, and you know that hallway, and I know that hallway with the kids' paintings fluttering, and the clay masks that the kids have baked in the kiln for the graduating class every year. And they run right down that hallway, right at the kid with the rifle. Right? There's the kid with the rifle, must have looked like a freaking cannon, you know, and they ran right at it, okay? Every fiber of their bodies must have been saying, run away, run away, run away. That's how we survive. That's how we get to live, right? You run away. 1,000,000 years of evolution have taught us down, run, escape, get away. Not them. They turned and ran right at the trouble. And you think it's just them? It's you. It's you. That same spark is in you. You know how congested it was around New York City on September 11th? For 100 miles in every direction, every highway was packed with ambulances, cops, firemen, soldiers, sailors, nuns, priests, rabbis, ministers, people who got in their cars and drove like a bat out of hell right toward trouble, right? Does that make sense? No, it doesn't make any sense. And that is why human beings are capable of greatness, because we do stuff that doesn't make sense because it's the right thing to do, you know? Anyway. So Dawn and Mary is the story. You take that story and you give it to people, and we will do this right. We'll remember them two women because we are those women and they are us. You know, they ran that in hall. We'll never see them again in this lifetime, but you know and I know what they felt. With every fiber of their bodies, as they ran toward getting their heads blown off, they knew they were going to get their heads blown off, and they ran right at trouble anyway. And I know how they felt, and you do too. They ran down that hall thinking, you want to get to my kids? You got You want to hurt my kids? Come on, let's go. You know? I mean, that is what a hero means. That is what greatness is. That is what we are capable of, you know? Why those seeds only open under great fires is a mystery to me. I wish it didn't. I wish we were like that all the time. But every one of us has that seed, and every one of us sitting next to the person next to you has that too, as your children do, and people you love and people you don't know. Reach and see. You know, see that shard of light in everybody. That's what we're here for, okay?
But this happened to me recently at the university. University has, like every university, I'm sure, has a big freshman convocation. It's the last event of when the freshmen come to begin their careers. And the very last thing is the parents and the children gather together in this one big honking room, and the president lectures them, blah, blah, blah. And then when it's over, the parents drive off in their cars, leaving their children with us. And it's so haunting. It's such an emotionally loaded hour. I never miss it. And last year this happened. A piece called All Legs and Curiosity. In the back of the cavernous, echoing convocation in August for the shy freshmen dipping their toes into the roaring river of the university for the first time, there are also, of course, a raft of outwardly calm but inwardly rattled parents of every gender. And I got to talking to a tiny mother, and as soon as she started talking to her daughter, she burst into tears right there by the women's bathroom. But she recovered fast and started talking faster, and I think you should hear what she said. This is the greatest moment and the worst moment of my life, she said. I was just changing her diapers a minute ago. Now she's all legs and curiosity. I can't believe she's not coming home tonight. I'll get ready to send her a text message at midnight. Where are you? Come home now. And she won't come home tonight. She'll be here with you all. I love that. I can't stand that. Her father can't stop crying, you know. He's out in the truck. Everybody thinks he's a tough guy, and he's out there sobbing in the truck. These are our babies, all these tall babies. Will you take care of her? This lady was about 4 foot nothing. And she's looking up at me. Will you take care of her? I was like, yes. Will you know if she's sad and scared? She's scared more than she admits. She brought her baby blanket, you know, in the bottom of her luggage. She doesn't think I know, but I know. I held it against my face last night when I packed her bag, and it smelled like her, and I cried and cried right into the bag. I hope you know how great she is. She's the greatest kid in the history of the world. She wanted to come here so bad. The day the letter came from you, she danced right out the front door and across the grass and around the neighborhood, waving the letter at the neighbors, and everyone was laughing and pouring out of their houses to give her a hug because everyone loves her. You'll love her too, you'll see. You better take care of her. She didn't want to go anywhere else. We tried to be sensible, but she wouldn't hear of it. She knew this was the place for her. She never wears socks, you know. Listen to me. She'll get sick twice this year. Mark my words, October and February. Are you writing this down? I was like, yes. Are you writing this down? Can you tell the nurses here about her getting sick? She wants to be a nurse, you know. Her grandmother was a nurse. My husband's mother, he's still out in the truck crying. He says he'll be fine by dinner. He will not be fine by dinner. He used to carry her on his back all the time when she was little. They would climb mountains that way with singing, and her singing into his ears. He makes fish just the way she likes it. He says he's going to go talk to your chefs here about how to cook their fish. She'll be the best nurse there ever was. She has the biggest heart anyone God ever made in a million years. I can't stand it that she's not coming home tonight. She's not coming home as a kid ever again, is she? Will you take the best care of her that you can? Do you swear it to me? Swear it to me. Because I spent every minute of every day since she was born thanking God for the gift of that kid. And even when she was bad, she was the best kid ever. You promise me you'll take care of her. I can't stand this. You'll know her. She's tall with long hair and blue jeans and a smile. You know, and in the back of my head, I'm thinking, great, that reduces it to about 2,000. You can't miss her. When you meet her, you'll know who she is. You'll know. Trust me. Once you meet her, you'll never forget her for the rest of your life. Trust me. It's like, oh, man. Oh, man, I cried.
One of the great watersheds or one of the great shadow lines you go over as a writer is at some point you realize that it's not about you, that everybody else is more interesting. And it's really a bummer to be 29 and discover that it's not all about you, but it turns out it's a wonderfully freeing thing for a writer. When you stop thinking about yourself and start listening to everybody else, the world presents you with stories by the millions. It's incredible. Yeah. It's really moving. This immediately reminds me of a great line from my dad. My dad is 90, a wonderful writer. And my dad, last year at our family reunion, said, learning to ask a question and shut your pie hole is the secret to great literature and great seduction. And we're like, oh, we were all horrified, you know, and my mother's yelling from the other room, that's why we had 8 kids, for Christ's sake. You know, my brother Peter says to him, how come you didn't tell us when we were 20? And my father says, smoking a cigar, you would have misused the gift, he says. June, I say to Jesse one day, come on, how hard is it really to grow Pinot Noir? I mean, everyone I talk to is always pissing and moaning about how hard it is to grow it and how it's like a wheezing genius hothouse orchid that has to be coddled and nursed like a fading movie star. And I expect him to grin like he usually does, but this time he winces. And it turns out he's had a long day in the vineyard worrying about his grapes because off he sails on a monologue that begins by lauding the complexity and subtlety and nuance of the wine that comes from the grape
then swerves into how the grapes are as thin-skinned as teenagers in a new school. Now the vines are all prissy about how they need just the right amount of sunlight and water, not too much and not too little, and how they totally quail and fail under rain that falls too hard, and they swoon at the slightest stress, and you have to darn well nearly feed them with a spoon when they're babies, and you might as well go around the vineyard at night and swaddle each vine in a blanket for heaven's sake, and rock them gently to sleep, and if a Pinot Noir vine even suspects there might be a virus on the same continent, it's ready to call it cancer or a brain tumor and give up the ghost. And it's pretty much like they spend all their time huddled moaning by the fireplace, asking you to plaintively go get them a hot herb tea and a lozenge and a lurid novel. And sometimes you want to stand at the top of the hill and shout, "Get a grip!"
Is there a writer that inspires me the most? Yes. Most of all, more than anybody else in the whole world, Robert Louis Stevenson. I just think Robert Louis Stevenson is the greatest writer who ever wrote our language. An unbelievable novelist, a masterful essayist. He wrote probably the single most popular book of poems ever in our language, Child's Garden of Verses, which your mother read to you, I'm sure, as a child, right? Oh, an unbelievable writer. When I feel clogged and stupid as a writer, I go reread Stevenson, Twain, I think the greatest American writer, E.B. White, also an unbelievably great American writer that people don't really mention often enough, Flannery O'Connor from Georgia, Milledgeville, Georgia, who had a dark, nasty sense of humor. She always cheers me up. That's about it, I think. Annie Dillard, the great Annie Dillard, but most of all Stevenson. You know, when I go back and read Stevenson for the verve and immediacy and honesty of his prose. You know, there's just something. He has no illusions and no agenda. Even in his great novels, Treasure Island and Kidnapped and Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, nobody ever wrote better about the darkness and the light inside every being than Robert Louis Stevenson. When was the last time you read Jekyll and Hyde? You know, it's about every person, every one of us has bolts of unbelievable courage and light, and also greediness and darkness. Every one of us has that inside of us, you know. And Stevenson wrote beautifully about that you have to wrestle with your dark. You do. Nobody's a hero or a villain. It doesn't work that way. Even Bin Laden, poor Pol Pot, poor Mao, poor Hitler, poor Stalin, you know. At some point they must have been, you know, clean, tall, hopeful boys. And all of them bent and twisted and went in the wrong direction. Someplace they couldn't find the right story. You know, what a shame. Also, never take for granted, I never do, every other person that you know, their childhood was hell. It just haunts me, you know. I mean, so much. And we don't even talk about this stuff much, you know. Once in a while you see it pop out. You know, I just saw numbers the other day. You know how many women get raped in the United States of America? 1 out of 6. 1 out of 6. Oh, 1 out of 8 boys. Oh, yeah. Why do we not talk about this? Why? And you know, people, you get damaged as a child. It takes you a whole lifetime to try to get back toward the light, man. You know, and I mean, anything you can do to cut past all the rest of this stuff, anything you can do to bring tenderness, mercy, attentiveness, just pay attention. Just pay attention. When I have dark days, we call them black dog days in the Irish world, when I'm filled to the brim with the violence and greed of my country sometimes, the awful lies, I'm so overwhelmed by it. I always try to remember, well, I seek out a 4-year-old or a dog. they always cheer you right back up. Go find a 4-year-old, you know, and who's like trying to pee off the porch or cramming a peach pit up his nose, you know, or a dog. But then I also try to remember, we made Abraham Lincoln, damn it, and Bruce Springsteen and Flannery O'Connor. We win. Okay? You know?
Scene, there's an old man who's got about 3 days left to go. He's going to die, and he knows it. Everybody knows it. And a young guy says to him, "Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a blunt question? What mattered? What mattered in your life?" And the old man says, "Hawks huddled disgruntled against hissing snow, wrens in winter thickets, swallows carving and swimming and slicing fat, grinning summer air, frozen dew outlining every single blade of grass, salmonberries, blackberries, thimbleberries, raspberries, cloudberries, snowberries. My children learning to read, the sinuous liquid flow of rivers and minks and cats, fresh bread with way too much butter, my children's hands when they cut my ancient grizzled face in their hands, exuberance and ebullience, tears of sorrow which are the salt seas of the heart. Sleep in every form from doze to bone weary, the shivering ache of a saxophone and the yearning of an oboe. Folding laundry hot from the dryer, cobblers and tailors, spotless kitchen floors, the way horses smell in spring, postcards in which the sender has written so much that he or she can barely squeeze in a signature. Opera on the radio, toothbrushes, the postman's grin, the green sifting powdery snow of cedar pollen on the porch every year, the way herons labor through the sky with such vast elderly dignity. People who care about hubcaps, the cheerful ears of dogs, all photographs of every sort, tip jars, wine glasses, the way barbers sweep up circles of hair after haircuts, handkerchiefs, libraries, poems read aloud by older poets on the radio. Fedora hats, excellent knives, the very idea of albatrosses and thesauruses, the tiny screws that hold spectacles together, book marginalia done with the lightest possible pencil as if the reader is whispering to the writer. People who kept dead languages alive, wooden rulers, fresh-mown lawns, first baseman's mitts, dish racks, the way my sons smell after their baths, the moons of Jupiter, all manner of boats, the fact that our species produced Edmund Burke, naps of every size, junior policeman badges, walruses, cassocks, surplices, the orphan caps of long-lost pens, welcome mats, ice cream trucks, all manner of bees, cabbages and kings, eulogy and elegy and puppetry, fingernail clippers, the rigging of sailing ships, ironing boards, hose and scythes, the mysterious clips that girls wear in their hair, bodhisattvas and beauticians, porters and portmanteaus, camas and canvas, bass and bluefish, furriers and farriers, trout and grout, peach pies of every size. The sprawling porches of old hotels and the old men asprawl upon them, the snoring of children, the burble of owls, the sound of my daughter typing her papers for school in the other room, the sound of my sons wrangling and wrestling and howling and yowling, all sounds of whatever tone or tenor issue from my children in all other forms of coupled pain and joy, which is to say everything alive, which is to say all prayers, which is what I just did. Amen.
And then let's end in a weird and beautiful way, because we're in this beautiful theater. Sing with me, brothers and sisters, sing with me. My mother's favorite song, my mother 93, my mother's mind is starting to slip away, you know, little by little, an extraordinary, cool, bony lady, you know, and her favorite song, as she's told us a million times, at my funeral, boys, you will sing Amazing Grace. We're like, oh, Ma, will you stop telling us that? So, brothers and sisters, you will sing Amazing Grace with me. We'll only sing the first verse because nobody knows the rest of the verses. Not even the people who invented it know the rest of the verses. But you'll sing the first verse with me, and for once, God help me, you will sing like crazy. I don't care that you can't sing, baloney. I can't sing, you know. So we're going to sing together, and for once, we're going to drop our masks and not be cool, and we're going to sing like hell. Ready? Here we go. Ready? And boom it, or else I'll be yelling at you. Ready? Here we go. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch. Boom it. Boom it. Was long, but now found, was blind, but now I see. Oh, yeah! Yes! Oh, that was cool. Anyway, stories. That's all I wanted to do tonight with you, is to just say, look, here are some stories. And one of the things that's happened to me recently as a writer is more and more I realize they're not my stories at all. They're not my stories. I feel like a charlatan written by Brian Doyle. Not really. I just caught a story and shaped it and gave it to you, and now it's your story. You'll never forget that couple that leaped from the... You'll never forget the man weeping because he just terrified his son. And it has nothing to do with Brian Doyle. It has to do with us. You know, we share stories, and it matters so powerfully. It matters so much. You know, so for a little time we were all together, as story catchers. So I should probably end in the exact same way we began. Thank you for being my teammate tonight, for being my story teammate. How sweet that we had a little minute together to laugh and to tell stories and to share something. When people are together, there's some kind of a thing is possible. And it has nothing to do with me and everything to do with us, it seems to me. So for a moment we were us in a rare and wonderful way. People invent religions and churches to try to get to some kind of a way to be us, just for a moment. So for your attentiveness, for your witness, for your grace, thank you so much. Take your energy, take your wild gift and go and use it. Okay? Amen. Thank you. Thank you.